So let's take a look at cooperatives outside India. The history of the cooperative movement perhaps started in Europe in the 19th century. They tried to overcome the very same problems that small producers face today in India. Farmers could not access loans for farming, the traders exploited them, market access was very difficult, and they did not have access to capital for setting up a business. The governments did try to support them wherever possible, but these cooperatives faced huge hardships and challenges. Established traders and businesses were not favorably disposed. Committed leadership with a focus on development rather than on charity helped them to eventually overcome these problems. Across the developed world, cooperatives have been and continue to be very successful. This is apparently surprising in market economies where the focus is on companies that are set up with investor capital and profits go to them. Primary producers have very little role to play in these companies. At a macro level, we find that the overall turnover of the nearly 2,000 cooperatives in the 65 countries surveyed by Monitor totals $2.6 trillion. The total turnover of the top 300 cooperatives worldwide was about $1.64 trillion, which translates into about 106 lakh crores in the year 2014. However, in India, we find that from the top 300, there are less than 5. And the combined turnover of these 5 is less than 10 billion or about 65,000 crores. And that translates into less than 1% of the world turnover. However, this is a matter of concern because agriculture has a special place in India. India has the largest number of farmers. There are more than 10 crore farmers in India itself, and it is the single largest livelihood for people. If you look at agriculture cooperatives, the turnover of agricultural cooperatives worldwide in the top 300 is about $470 billion, but in India it's less than 10 billion. The largest agricultural cooperatives are in Japan with a turnover of 115 billion. Other countries like the US have 100 billion, France has 68 billion, Germany has 40 billion, and Denmark 25 billion. And we must remember that these countries have a very small population compared to India. In terms of income, in the US, cooperatives earned $6.5 billion in net income and generated $247 billion in total revenue in 2014. The cooperative membership grew by 1% to just under 2 million. It is estimated that there are about 2.2 million farms in the US, showing that nearly all farmers are covered by cooperatives. The US government says the nation's cooperatives are essential to the US economy and to rural America. CHS, their largest cooperative, had a turnover of 43 billion in 2014. So let me just flag one question here, that in the United States, which is a free market capitalist country, we find that cooperatives are not only thriving, but they are reaching practically every farmer in that country. So what do we need to do to make this happen in India? The International Cooperative Alliance reports that the cooperative movement brings together over 1 billion people around the world. That is something like 1 in 7 people in the world. The United Nations estimates that in 1994, the livelihood of nearly 3 billion people, or half the world's population, was made secure by cooperative enterprise. These enterprises continue to play significant economic and social roles in their communities. Beyond the producer, these cooperatives also create employment. So, for instance, the ICA study reports that in 2014, cooperatives contributed to resilient employment, contributed to a sustainable economy, and to the well-being of the people at work, making up almost 12% of the entire employed population of the G20 countries. Cooperative enterprises generate partial or full-time employment involving at least 250 million individuals worldwide, either within or in the scope of cooperatives. In the United States, there are about 30,000 cooperatives which provide more than 2 million jobs. They have also created very successful brands in the market with over $3 trillion in assets and more than 2 million jobs. Some are well-known brands in the US even today, like Land O'Lakes and Sunkist. And the US alone has 14 cooperatives in the Fortune 500 companies, which lists the world's largest companies by turnover or sales. So the key question here is, how have they managed to get such a high market share in a competitive free market economy? Let us now look at penetration. By penetration, we mean the percentage of farmers in a country that are covered by cooperatives. In Canada, for instance, 4 out of every 10 Canadians are members. These are not farmers. For every 10 Canadian citizens, 4 are members of some cooperative or the other. In Quebec, approximately 70% of the population are cooperative members. In Malaysia, 6.78 million or 27% of the total population are members of cooperatives. In Norway, 2 million members are members of cooperatives out of a population of 4.8. The country with the largest number of individual members indirectly represented by the alliance is the United States, which has 256 million members. Now that's a very large number. This means that practically every citizen in the United States is member of some cooperative or the other. They may not all be agricultural cooperatives. They could be banks, cooperative banks, or consumer cooperatives and other forms of cooperatives. The next countries with such large membership are in Asia, with India following next behind the United States with nearly 94 million individual members. Japan has 77 individual members, and the 4th largest number of members is in Iran with nearly 37 million individual members. So we will come back to this question of how do we create such successful, vibrant cooperatives in India. We must close by noting that the National Dairy Development Board, known as the NDDB in India, successfully led the White Revolution, which converted India into the world's largest producer of milk and a net exporter. It raised over 15 million dairy farmers out of poverty and continues to thrive even today.